Hello and welcome to Resistance Radio. I am John Kane and I am happy to be here. I'm not particularly happy overall, but I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be broadcasting on WBAI in New York City and WPFW in Washington, D.C. And I'll get to exactly why I'm not the happiest camper in the world, but a couple of things, I guess, and these aren't necessarily happy things either, but I want to offer my condolences to all those who are feeling the loss of Graham Greene. He passed away this week at really not at that old an age, at 73. I know he's been sick. Graham is Haudenosaunee. He's from Six Nations, and he has had a tremendously successful and relatively diverse career in Hollywood, on television, even appearing on the Res Dogs and a few other. I've even done a few commercials and PSAs and that kind of stuff. So I always thought very highly of Graham Greene. He never was mired in the kind of controversy that you may see other Hollywood stars get involved in. And so I think he was a reputable human being, as well as a fine actor. Kind of a funny guy too. He was a fun human being to be around. So again, I offer my condolences to any of those who are feeling the loss of Graham Greene. Hey, today is I think today or yesterday, one of these days here is anniversary of Colin Kaepernick taking a knee. He still manages to be in the news, whether it's Spike Lee, and he parting ways on the series they were doing on ESPN, or whether he still gets a look every once in a while at the possibility of playing football, even as he gets older and longer out of the out of the NFL. I respect what Colin Kaepernick did. I respect what he was and what he is, and I'm glad he's been able to transition from football, even if it was forced, into being a bit of an icon. And again, I should have wore my I've got my number 7 shirt. I should have wore that today, and I didn't.
You
So
didn't wear the number 7 shirt?
what's that?
You didn't wear the number 7
No,
shirt?
I
You're
should.
not
I
wearing the
got
number
you
7
know my
shirt?
number 7 shirt, right? You've seen it before,
I
yeah.
know the number 7 shirt. Yeah, I did totally.
Yeah, I can't believe I didn't remember to wear that
Oh,
today, but I should have.
yeah, it's 9 years. It's been 9 years, and
Yeah, it's
I haven't watched football since then. It's
yeah,
so
I
hard.
and I barely do. Between that and of course the owner of the Buffalo Bills getting a
Yeah, yeah,
handoff from $500 million of money extorted out of Senecas.
yeah.
It's really hard
hmm
to be excited about a sport that's gotten
I
this
really,
ugly.
yeah, really. I mean, like, just like what you're saying is that Colin Kaepernick really made an amazing transition, and and he still works out. I mean, he's 37 years old, and 37 for football. That's getting up there. I
But
mean,
he
like,
hasn't
that's
he
already.
hasn't been knocked around for the last decade either. So
Yeah,
so
that's true too. That's true too. He
look,
is in
and
good.
I would
He is
love
in
to see
great
him.
shape.
I'd love to see him get a shot, but at the same time, there's a part of me that says, you know what, he's better off without football. And
Yeah, that's where I'm coming to grips too as well too. I mean, like, and I haven't watched NFL since 2016 in solidarity of Kaepernick, and very likely I'm going to do it this year as well too. But it's conflicting. It's conflicting. It was something that was ingrained in me for so long, and then making the commitment to show that solidarity. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but it really goes to show that there is some kind of level of discipline in order to maintain that level of solidarity,
well,
you
and
know?
the thing is, we gotta vote with our dollars, with what we do. I mean, I'm not a big fan of American democracy, but you know what? There's too
Yeah,
much complicity that we all have in
absolutely.
some of the ills of the world at this point. And
hmm
when I think about all the support that a guy like Donald Trump still maintains, regardless of how many people he hurts, and across all sectors. I mean, look, if you're poor white folks, you're not being treated very well by Donald Trump either. So your loyalty is a little misplaced, and so when I think about all of the things that we can make a conscious choice about, even silly things. I mean, Well, maybe a silly thing. I won't shop. I won't eat at a Chick-fil-A because of their strong
I,
ideological position against against gay
well,
people and other
John,
other issues. Oh yes.
John, I mean, you're talking to the same person that does that as well too. So you're okay, man. You're comfortable.
Well, and I can live without the NFL. I can live without Chick-fil-A. I mean, so it's not like my
Yeah.
life has been ruined, and I don't think these are hard sacrifices if they are sacrifices at all to make. So, I don't
Right.
know.
Right.
Again, my hats off to Colin
Hmm.
Kaepernick. I look, and I want to remind people he did get paid off by the NFL for what they did to him. He
For
received a
collusion.
multi-million-dollar settlement. Look, would he have made more money playing football? Absolutely. But when I hear people say, "Yeah, look at him now," yeah, he laughed all the way to the bank, and he's made money off of some of the things he's done on television and that kind of stuff. He's considered an iconic human rights activist, and so I don't think Colin Kaepernick is hurting for money by any means. And like I said, I respect what he did, and even negotiating a settlement with the NFL. I mean, I know they couldn't come right out and say what it was, but the bottom line is, if somebody pays you because you've sued them, even if you settle it out of court, they lost. They lost the lawsuit. They lost the
Right.
fight, and
Right.
and Colin Kaepernick won it. So again, my hats off to Colin Kaepernick, and I still to this day. I never want to stand up and do the whole pledge allegiance to the flag or honor the national anthem. I don't take any. That's not my thing. I mean, it's not.
Right.
And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but when somebody's asked me, I says, this government put me in prison for 2 years. And I hate to get that blunt about it, but it's not something I talk about on the show much, so I'm not going to talk about it much here. But
Hmm.
but it's a matter of fact. So anyway, hats off to Colin Kaepernick. I wish nothing but the best for him, and whatever he chooses or has the opportunity to do, I'll support what he does. I'll support what he does one way or the other. So
Absolutely.
that's that. Um, all right. So what am I really not happy about? Reggie, have you been reading or seeing any of the stuff on Connecticut out there in Long Island?
No. What happened?
All right, you know that I have worked closely with the New York State Education Department, NICED.
Yes.
I
Yes.
I
Yes.
think that I've
Yes.
had a relatively good relationship with Dr.
Hmm.
Rosa, who is the Commissioner of Education, and
Hmm.
many of the people who I've worked with on throughout all of these years during this getting this ban, which I had to push a little bit. I this didn't happen all by itself. I mean, obviously, I took on my whole school. For those who don't know the story, and look, I know some of you have heard me talk about this, perhaps ad nauseum. I don't know, but let me refresh. I took on my old high school, and they ultimately retired their mascot, and then a new board was seated, or at least enough new board members were seated, where they rescinded their retirement and brought their Cambridge Indians mascot back. I worked with 5 families, and they did the most of the work, so I don't want to take credit for what they did, but they petitioned Dr. Rosa, the New York State Education Department, with a what they call a 310 petition, calling the Cambridge Central School Board, um, uh, calling their actions arbitrary and capricious, and that they had violated and abused their discretionary authority by bringing back a mascot that was thoughtfully retired. And when I say thoughtfully, I mean the resolution for retiring the native mascot was laced with all the information that I provided and others provided to the Cambridge School Board as to the reasons why native mascots are wrong, regardless of whether people think the actual name or the actual logo is derogatory or not. It's the idea being used for mascots. So it was all listed in the resolution to retire. And when they unretired it, they just said, we're bringing the other one back. No excuses, no reasons, no logic. No, there was no research. There was nothing saying, well, here's the goodness of having a native mascot and mocking native people in the process. No, they didn't try any of that. So Dr. Rosa ruled against Cambridge. Then I kind of went on a little bit of an attack to Dr. Rosa. I said, all right, you did it to one school. You have the power to tell one school to get rid of their mascot, which means you have the power to tell them all. So I was, all over the media for a while, and I ultimately Dr. Rosa and her, and the New York State Education Department issued a ban. Now it still was pending approval from the New York State Board of Regents, which they did vote unanimously to, again to support this ban and to put this ban in place. So basically, all schools in New York State had to stop using native mascots with a little bit of wiggle room. There was a little room if you had a relationship with a native organization, a nation, I should say, a federally or state recognized nation, you could get permission, and that's what happened out here in Western New York in the city of Salamanca, which is located not on the ancestral homelands of the Seneca Nation, but actually on the Allegheny territory of the Seneca Nation. It is on Seneca land. And the Seneca president gave Salamanca the permission to keep their Warriors mascot, which I didn't agree with, but he did it, and we'll see how that lasts long term. But that's what happened there. Now, a bunch of schools, 4 of them in particular in Long Island, were fighting this, and they were fighting it strongly. They sued the state and they lost. And in fact, every legal action that was taken against the New York State Education Department to end this ban has failed. Every one of them. And there's been several. And a couple have announced an appeal and that kind of stuff. Massapequa, as many know, had Trump's moron of a education secretary show up there pledging support to the Massapequa Chiefs. So that one's still out there. What she tried to do, by the way, Linda McMahon tried to get the Justice Department and go before a judge to get to claim that getting rid of the native mascots was a violation of civil rights. It was a civil rights violation, which is absolutely absurd because the Civil Rights Commission of the United States basically called for a ban of this sort and has done so for the last 20 years. So her claim is stupid, and thus far, not a single judge has touched it. So there is no case. There was a file and there's a complaint, but no judge has picked this thing up to say that the New York State Education Department has violated the Civil Rights Code in doing this thing. However, there is another school, and a school by the name of Connetquot, and they called themselves the Connetquot Thunderbirds, and they had already filed for an extension to make the change. And they dedicated funds. Somebody said that $23 million they set aside to change their mascot. But then they proposed a settlement agreement. Now, this settlement agreement is with the Board of Regents, okay? But the Board of Regents wasn't really involved in the negotiation of what this settlement was. Instead, it ends up being drop on the lap of Letitia James, who basically has not been a great ally for Native people, if you recall her position on the Shinnecock sign and that kind of stuff. I mean, she hasn't exactly been in our corner. So all this news was breaking over the last several weeks, and I kept weighing in on the stuff, even on the show. I think I weighed in, and I said, look, there is no deal. Because when I first heard this story in the New York Post about this deal, and the way the New York Post had put it out was that the state had proposed a settlement agreement. And here's what they alleged in the New York Post, which is kind of hard to take at its word. But they alleged that the state proposed allowing Connetquot to keep the name T-Birds rather than Thunderbirds, and if they dropped their suit, which is now an appeal. They lost badly the first time around, so there was no reason to believe they were going to be successful on appeal. But if they dropped their lawsuit, the state would allow them to keep T-Birds. However, when I first heard the story, I got a hold of Dr. Rosa directly. I said, "What are you guys doing to me here? I mean, this is what you've done?" And they said, No. What we said was they had to prove, because they were now alleging that Thunderbirds was never a native reference. Now, I don't know how you make that claim. I mean, if you look up the word Thunderbird, there's no question. There's no other etymology for the words Thunderbirds other than a translation of some sort of native cultural imagery. This is a native issue. Now, I'm Haudenosaunee. Thunderbirds aren't a part of my culture, but they are a part of the culture of the native people on Long Island, the Algonquin. I mean, it is one of their stories. Now, it's not a religious thing, and people say, well, it's a spiritual being. Most of this stuff is metaphoric. So just to be clear here, it's not like the Shinnecock and the Unkeechug are down there praying to the thunderbirds. It's a story that talks about the balance between the powers of the sky and the powers of the earth. So that's what the Thunderbird represents in most cultures. And it varies depending on whether you're talking about the Northwest or the Southwest or or wherever nations have used this concept of a Thunderbird. It's not an actual bird. It's a mythological part of a native lore. So I'll just leave it at that. But anyway, so that's what Dr. Rosa told me. She says that, and she said, John, you're on our Indigenous Mascot Advisory Council. We would seek your approval on this thing, and not mine personally, but the council. And I said, okay, I felt good about it. So I still kept pounding the drum on this thing. Said, no, the New York Post is wrong, and then other news outlets started doing this thing over and over again. Well, finally, one of the reporters from Newsday sent me a document, and the document is the settlement agreement, and it's a settlement between the school board of Connetquot and all the individuals on the Board of Regents. And it's the school board's proposed settlement. And in it, there are some of the things that are stipulated that they'll drop their case. They'll cease to pursue the legal action. But the other stipulation had to do with the use of the word T-bird. So I want to explain it because and I'm going to take it right from the agreement. And this is what it says. This is the second stipulation. It says, plaintiff's use of the name T-bird based on settling plaintiff's representation that according to the information and documentation presently known to them, the proposed new official team name, T-Birds, has never been associated with any indigenous imagery of any kind. Defendants agree, again, defendants, that's NYSED. This is the Board of Regents and NYSED, agree that the use of the term T-Birds by settling plaintiffs, along with the current image of an eagle, thunderbolt, and or lightning bolt, is permissible under Part 123 of the ban. And settling plaintiffs agree to implement all necessary steps to utilize this name and these logos and or mascots no later than March 1st of next year. So what this settlement agreement says is that the defendant, New York State Education Department, agrees that their use of T-birds has no reference to native culture. And of course, that's just a blatant lie. I mean, the word T-birds is derived from thunderbirds. Thunderbirds is clearly a native mythological construct. It is a concept that many nations across the country have used, including those in Long Island. So I spoke with some folks from NYSED just today, and I said, you sold us out. And they said, well, we had to look at the larger fight. And what's the larger fight? Massapequa? You didn't think you could win on appeal after you destroyed Connetquot and the others at the lower courts? I mean, come on. So now I haven't spoke to Betty Rosa, and I'm not going to hound her. I understand her mother just passed away, so I've offered my condolences to her, and I haven't even addressed her on this issue. But bottom line is, NYSED has sold us out. And look, I appreciate that NYSED did the ban in the first place. I appreciate that the vast majority of schools all across the state will no longer have native mascots. But two of them will. One based on the permission from the Seneca Nation president in Salamanca and Connetquot. And make no mistake about it, everybody in that school district knows that T-Birds is a native reference. Everybody knows it. Even the people that I can't stand on that Native American Guardians, Nagets I call them, even those Nagets are saying, of course it's a native reference. So in one really narrow place, I'm in complete agreement with those morons from NAGA. Not that it matters, because I don't think their word matters at all. But just the irony of that group that has advocated for the use of native mascots is now saying, well, you're allowing it to stay. And I said this to again, I'm not going to name names, but I said this to representatives from NICEAD. I said the vast reporting on this all said that you guys, changed the rule, because the rule was that you could not use a name or an image that ever was used as a native reference. So if you had, let's say you called yourself the Warriors for the last 20 years, and then 5 years ago you changed it. The rule is no, you still can't. Still can't use Warriors unless you get permission from a nation. So the fact is that Connecticut has always, they only came into existence in the 1960s, by the way. They kind of broke off, or they two other school districts came together. The funny thing is that East Islip, which called themselves the Redmen, they used to call their yearbook the Connecticut. And then now there was a school called Connecticut. So they took some of the imagery, because as this school was developing, you started seeing East Islip using images of a Thunderbird. Of course, when I say a Thunderbird, they were always using the stereotypical images you would see from Hollywood, whether it was a totem pole or, with teepees around it. That's the kind of stuff that they were using, because they never cared enough to say, well, what's the Algonquin? What is the Algonquin version of a Thunderbird? What does it mean to them? What does it really mean? Who is it? What is it? Now, they never bothered to find that out because they don't care. So I blasted the folks from NICEAD pretty strongly today in my exchange. And I said, you sold us out. It's a complete cop out. Because what I was told was, well, now it's just in the hands of the Attorney General. But if the agreement says that you agree with this, why wouldn't Letitia James, who really doesn't care about us anyway, why wouldn't she sign off on this thing? Now, the school board just voted this past week to move forward with this settlement agreement. So it looks like, unless for whatever reason Letitia James grows a few brain cells and realizes, wait a minute, of course T-Birds is a native reference. I mean, which she could do, but I don't think she's really involved in this. That's just her name on the document. I think they're going to push this thing through, and Connecticut will remain the T-Birds. Not Thunderbirds, but T-Birds. And they use an eagle in a sweater with a thunderbolt on its chest. I don't know if you've seen this, Reggie. It's kind of nerdy and awkward anyway. But so I even went ahead and I gave my friend Harry Wallace a call. I don't have him on the show today, but I kind of wish I had said that. But I told him I was going to mention him on my show, because he's just as pissed as I am. And I let the folks know it, and I said that two of us who are on that Indigenous Council, that Indigenous Mascot Council, Advisory Council, we both strongly oppose this settlement agreement. And make no mistake about it, we oppose it. We reject the notion that somehow T-Birds is not connected to Thunderbirds, which is not connected to Native people. I mean, it's an absurd proposition. But, and again, I'm not giving NICEAD or the Board of Regents or Letitia James any cover on this thing. But I know that the overall politics and the failure of any real checks and balances that come from not just Trump, but the right wing in general. Look, if it doesn't exist now, Reggie, if those checks and balances don't exist now, did they ever really exist before?
Well,
I mean, honestly. I mean, because everybody keeps saying, well, I mean, it's like Trump giving the order to murder a bunch of guys on the water near Venezuela. Was it legal? And everybody says, well, whatever Trump does, he decides whether it's legal later, or somebody will decide whether it was legal after it happened. Well, what difference does that make? It doesn't make these people come back to life. I'm not saying that they were people out sailing. I'm not saying that they weren't drug runners. I'm not saying any of that stuff. But the idea that you could just kill a bunch of people on a boat without any trial, without any due process whatsoever. But there is no checks and balances. And honestly,
no.
If there is none now, you have to ask the question, was there ever? So,
well, there it is. It is right there.
I mean, when I think about all the things that the Democrats said they couldn't do, like when Obama had a chance to put a Supreme Court justice in and it was held by McConnell. Why? Apparently, the president can do all kinds of things, and this president certainly is, whether it's legal or not. It
Right.
doesn't, look, I get it. Courts have ruled against his use of the National Guard in Los Angeles. Done deal. He already did it. So you can rule against it. So what's the consequences? I mean, now he's being sued for bringing the military into Washington D.C. And I got to tell you, none of the media, not just mainstream media, NPR, none of them are reporting on how many protests are happening in Washington D.C. I mean, Reggie, have you seen anything, even on social media? There is barely anything showing the thousands of people, other than the one guy throwing a submarine sandwich at a cop. That's it. I mean, if you watch the news, even what's on social media, you're under the impression that one sandwich throwing guy was all there was. I mean, I know you
Well,
can find it if you really search for it, but let's
right.
face it, the media
It
helped
doesn't
Trump.
pop up immediately.
Well, and the media helped Trump get elected the first time, and
Right.
they still pander to him now. And I think I honestly believe that the media thinks that covering Trump and having Trump in office makes them relevant because they can criticize a little bit. I mean, they don't really come out in the way that they should, but I think the media believes that Trump makes them relevant because the news media has become less and less relevant over time. And
It's pretty obvious.
yeah, yeah.
It's pretty obvious. I mean, you're spot on that. I think the thing is that, and not only that, John, but let's not forget, during the time of Biden, when he was in office, who they were talking about as the potential opponent for 2024. Back in 2021,
They were giving a
Trump.
free campaign coverage through
Yeah.
the entire Biden administration, and I'm not bragging up Biden by any means. I have
No.
I have
No,
my issues.
I know you're
And
not.
again,
I know you're not.
my anger right now in New York, it's Democrats. I mean, it's Kathy Hochul. I mean, look, I was pleased to see that NYSED was actually standing up. They needed to stand up to Kathy Hochul as she was trying to throw them under a bus. But then now they capitulated in a way that makes them just typical Democrats. That, as much as I tried to stay with an agency that was more apolitical, and they are less political than the state legislature, but at the end of the day, they capitulated to politics, and that's what they're doing right now. And I could not be more outraged. And again, my friend Harry Wallace, we spoke at length about this, and he's every bit as livid and angry. Because let me reiterate: Thunderbirds are part of his culture, and there's no connection to other than their stereotypical use of it. And now sticking a bird in a sweater with a thunderbolt on his chest. I mean, I don't know what the hell that's even supposed to be. But it is just so absurd. And here's my dig at the media. Not one person from the media bothered to look at that one line in the agreement. It's the second line in the agreement, for crying out loud, where it says that NYSED, the defendant, is agreeing that T-Birds has no native reference. Where's the media on this? Why does some reporter say, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense? Of course it does. Of course, T-Birds is a reference to Thunderbirds, which is a reference to a native mythological being. I mean, it isn't their mascot isn't John Travolta with his T-Birds jacket on from Greece.
Oh my God.
I mean, come on. It's not a Thunderbird is a car. I mean, and even all of those things are references to the native mythological creature. So
Of course it is.
I mean, I don't know. I'm at a level of not just disappointment, but I'm just pissed off. And I feel bad that Dr. Rose's mother passed away, and I'm not going to dog her in this situation. I did originally when she ruled against my old high school, Cambridge. I kind of went after her a little bit, and not in a mean-spirited way, but to say, look, if you have the power to do it to one school, you have the power to do it at them all. NYSED has been silent for over 20 years. It was 20 years prior to this. The Commissioner of Education told schools to change it, and many of them did. Commissioner Richard Mills told schools to drop the native mascots, and he did it on the heels again, of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights declaring that this was wrong and that it should be banned. That's back in 2001, I think it was. I mean, that's how many years ago the Human Rights Commission and the Department of Education in New York has been condemning this. And of course, we've been condemning it longer than that. But now with this move, and look, it's not like this was a risky suit that NYSED had, even in appeal with Connecticut. They won easily in the other courts. So the fact that they were appealing, there was no reason to believe that Connecticut was going to be successful. Although I will say the only thing that's changed since they lost their initial suit is the Trump administration jumping in with their Department of Education, which they've completely gutted. For all I know, there's only one person that works there anymore, and her name is Linda McMahon, the wrestling lady. So this is who is going to bat for Connecticut. In fact, she even threatened to sue the school if they went ahead with removing the mascot. There are still people, by the way, who are kind of pissed that they're dropping Thunderbirds for T-Birds. One of the former school board members is still livid about the idea that they've even compromised and given up Thunderbirds for T-Birds, if you can believe that. I mean,
wow.
So
I'm looking at the logo right now. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's pretty stupid. I mean, it really is. I mean, this is the cartoonish buffoonery that we face with when they start to use our culture for their.
We live in a cartoon.
Yeah.
We live in a cartoon. We live in a freaking cartoon.
And I want to keep in mind, again, this isn't a mascot that goes back to the 20s or anything else. Connecticut became a school they built the school in the 60s, and I think they adopted this mascot in about 1963 or something along those lines. And it doesn't show up anywhere in any yearbooks until the 80s or later. I mean, but again, just to be clear, Connecticut is an Algonquin word, and it means the long river or something, or at the long river or something along those lines. And I imagine it's somewhat bastardized because that's what white folks do to native words. But so Connecticut is basically an Algonquin word. So it's the Connecticut Thunderbirds or Connecticut T-Birds. So you're going to try to tell me that a school that's already adopted the name from the Algonquin and then attach T-Birds to it, that there's no native reference there? I mean, and look, I tried every possible way to even using the AI-generated answers. Is there any etymology to the word Thunderbirds that's not native? And it always comes back, no. There's only one place that word comes from, and that's from native mythology and culture. And so there's no question about it. And look, I know they had Thunderbird aircraft. I think Canada called some division of their Air Force the Thunderbirds, and I know that there's been other uses of it, but it still all comes back to our usage of it. So, again, I could not be more disappointed, and that's not strong enough. I couldn't be more pissed off at NYSED than selling us out. I mean, I went to bat for these guys over and over and over again after they issued the ban. I was diligently serving on this advisory council. When other people dropped off from here and there, I was at every meeting of this advisory council. And I was assured from Dr. Rosa that any agreement to keep T-Birds would have to go through us. Well, I don't see it. It doesn't show up in the settlement agreement. So I could not be more annoyed or livid than I am right now over this issue. Now, again, I want to praise Dr. Rosa's work and some of the fine folks that I worked with at the time for bringing this thing, to where they did. But when I hear the guy that I was speaking to today say, well, we had to look at the bigger fight. I don't know what bigger fight they're talking about. I mean, so they sell us out, and those whose use of Thunderbirds is part of their culture, they sell us out to bolster the position against Massapequa? I mean, I don't even understand the logic there. I don't even understand the trade-off. So That's what Nye said, and the Board of Regents and Letitia James are doing now. Apparently, they're selling us out on this mascot issue, and I realize, look, for those of you who think, why is this John Kane always talking about the issue? Why is this such a big deal? It is a big deal. It's a big deal because it's ours. And it's not bad enough that there's no Native people who even live in the school district. Well, I'll take it back. Out of the thousands and thousands of people who live there, I think I saw the demographics listed 17 that self-identify, which means they probably aren't really enrolled Native people, but self-identify as Native American. 17 kids in the entire school district of 6,000 or so kids. So it doesn't even register as a percentage, as 1% in their demographics analysis. So we just aren't represented. And, I remember when my friend Donna Van Boyle was fighting Pennsylvania. In fact, she went to the Human Relations Commission, and they had taken a position against the use of Native mascots, especially with Neshaminy High School, and they called themselves the Redskins. And they told them that they had to drop it or prove that somehow it wasn't derogatory, which is crazy. Then a new set of commissioners came in and said, well, but there's no Native kids in the school, so who's to get offended? So apparently, Reggie, you can use the N-word if you're an all-white school because there's no black people there to hear it. According to the Human Relations. And again, if you don't have numbers, they can treat you any way they want. Does it sound familiar? It seems like that's been American history.
Yeah. So. If a tree falls, if a racist utters something that is offensive, does it make it offensive?
Yeah,
it makes.
If you don't have an offending party, if you're not there to really embarrass an individual face to face, is it really derogatory? That's what it comes down to, and that's just a pathetic
eyeballs.
Position. Yeah.
I have to feel your soul fall apart when I say it.
Yeah, if I can't crush you with this, then it's not really effective. Then we're just having fun at your expense, and that's not the same thing. Yeah, and to be clear, these mascots are used for amusement and entertainment. They aren't a part. Like I said, there's nothing that explains in Connecticut what an actual Thunderbird is or what their Thunderbird is. There's nothing to say, and of course now they can't even pretend that it's a respectful usage of Native culture because now they gotta say, oh no, it's got nothing to do with you. No, we're just T-birds, as in twinkle birds or something. I don't know. Now they can completely lie, even though everybody in that town, in that school district, knows that T-birds is really Thunderbirds. And NYSED claims, and the Attorney General both say, well, we're still going to protect the integrity of the word Thunderbirds. Well, how can you be? How is that even possible with what you're preparing to do? Now, I don't know that this is a signed deal yet. I know Harry Wallace, who is the chief out there in Puspatuck of Uncochug, he was trying to weigh in with the Attorney General and had no luck. So I don't know that there's any last-ditch effort that we can make to get the Attorney General to at least use her own real judgment. I don't mean just overlook this thing. Because if you just read it, it's, well, NYSED says it's okay, so it's okay. But then you say, wait a minute, what did they say is okay? That T-Birds doesn't represent or reference Native culture? Of course it does. But see, and nobody, again, in the news media will point that out either. That's the one thing I was saying overall after all this time. I said, look, the deal was contingent on them proving that it didn't have any Native reference. Well, apparently they didn't have to prove it. They just put it in the agreement, and the agreement says, and I talked to NYSED today, and they said, well, yeah, we agreed with the stipulation. Based on what? You didn't ask us. You didn't ask any Native people. So all you white folks at NYSED, and I know there's people of color too. No Native people there, mind you. Well, I'll take it back. I think there was one Native person. So you all think that T-Birds is fine without going to any of us, your exalted advisory council? No, they didn't. They threw us under a bus. They just threw us under a bus. All right. Well, so anyway, folks, I just want to remind people, we are listener-supported radio. and you're not going to hear this stuff anywhere else. And that's what makes Resistance Radio kind of a unique, a unique show, because nobody else cares about this stuff on the radio except for me. And those of you who hear it, and some of you are probably tired of hearing it. Frankly, it wouldn't surprise me if that's the case. But I think you need to understand that there's a reason that I'm passionate about this stuff. I don't think that the appropriation of our culture is something that is right. I don't think it should be allowed. I don't think it is right, and I have a lot of problems with any notion of you know using our culture or any stereotypical images derived from our culture as for entertainment. I just think that's wrong. So I want to thank you for listening. I want to ask that you support WBAI and WPFW, and let me and I'll spend some time here explaining how you do so. You can go to Buddy, that's BUDDY.WBAI.org, and you can follow the prompts there to make a donation. You can become a buddy, which is to say that you are becoming a sustaining member of the station, and you can do so in the name of Resistance Radio, and I greatly appreciate it. The main thing is to get WBAI supported, but obviously I appreciate anybody who references Resistance Radio in doing so. You can also go to the phone lines and you can make a pledge that way, and you can call 1-833-922-4692. That's 1-833-WBAI-NYC. Numbers again are 1-833-922-96. Oh, I'm sorry, 4692. Let me say it again since I screwed it up. 1-833-922-4692. And again, if for whatever reason you get an answer machine, just leave your name and your number, and somebody will get back to you right away to accept your pledge or your donation. That's for WBAI. For WPFW, I ask that you go to their website, which is WPFWFM.org. And you can follow the prompts there. You can click the donate button and follow the prompts. There, too, you can become a sustaining member of the station. They don't call it buddies there, but you're still my buddy. You can still become a sustaining member of WPFW by making a commitment to give $5, $10, $15, $20 a month. Treat us almost as a streaming service, I guess. Yeah, unless you think that's a bad word. But otherwise, just make a monthly donation to WPFW and in the name of Resistance Radio, and I would greatly appreciate it. There you can also go to the phone lines. You can go to 202-588-9739 or the 800 number, which is 800-222-9739. You can do Cash App with $ WPFW FM. Whatever. There are many ways that you can make a donation. And I'm not going to say it again, as I always tell people. The other thing that you can do is just spread the word. Because, like I said, the media, and I don't mean just mainstream media, even the less mainstream media. So when you're talking about mainstream media, whether you're talking about NPR, even many of these guys who are doing podcasts and posting stuff on the internet or any of these web-based news services, none of them are adequately addressing this issue. I know I was listening. I was kind of going back and forth with David Zirin, and he was saying, "Look, is anybody seeing the protests in Washington D.C.?" I said, "Look, the media doesn't do this stuff. They don't think it's a requirement of them. They no longer think and it's both the mainstream and I blame NPR. And I always got to cite. Do you recall, Reggie, when Sonia Sotomayor was nominated for the Supreme Court? I listened on NPR, and they called her the daughter of Puerto Rican immigrants. I mean, does NPR not know that Puerto Rico is a part of the United States, regardless of how it got there? I mean, are there Puerto Rican immigrants? I mean, do you have to immigrate from Puerto Rico? When did that start? Because apparently NPR got that completely wrong. So apparently NPR doesn't believe that Puerto Ricans are Americans.
Because they speak a different language. That's why.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of people in the United States that speak a different language. There's a guy in the White House who speaks gibberish, and nobody suggests that he's not an American.
Well, there were several presidents that speaks gibberish, and we got them back again. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact. So all I can tell people is on this Connecticut story, you're gonna see this stuff. It's been coming out on the news, basically in news channels and in print. I don't know if the Times is doing anything, but New York Post, Newsday, and I do have to at least thank Newsday for sending me this settlement agreement because they were the only ones who actually sent it to me. I talked to an AP reporter today and yesterday and explained my position on the whole thing. It's wrong for Connecticut to be allowed to use T-birds. There's no question about that, and there's no right side of this thing. It is just wrong. It is wrong to use native culture or references for white people, predominantly white people. And make no mistake about it, Connecticut School District is almost 70% white, and it's 99.9% non-native. So it is not in any way, shape, or form do they have any commitment or fiduciary responsibility to Native people. So they do whatever the hell they want to do, and that includes calling themselves T-birds. So I don't know. I'm going to misspell it. I'm going to call them F-birds, and we don't have to discuss what F stands for. But that's what I'm calling them. It's just a letter. So that's my commentary on that. So you're going to see stories in the media. You're going to see it in print. You're going to see it online. But just know, I have yet to see one entry into the media question this stipulation that says T-birds is not a native reference. I haven't heard one news broadcaster do that. Now, I'm optimistic that maybe Newsday will. Maybe they're going to release a story this afternoon. Maybe they will. I talked to the reporter, so I know that he knows. And maybe the AP reporter will do the same thing. But look, I had all the confidence in the world that Dr. Rosa and the folks at NICEAD were going to do the right thing here. I did. I mean, and it pains me to say that I'm now looking like an ass because of my defense of NICEAD. But that's it. So here I am. Yeah. That's it. That's it. Here I am. Yes, I can do donkey impressions. I do other animals too, but only for birthday parties and bar mitzvahs. All right. Well, I also got to remind people, look, am I angry? Yes. Can I still smile about it? Yes. Because I always get hit with this whole thing about me being angry and self-victimizing, by everyone. Anytime I bring up something where I don't agree with the overarching narrative that's out there, I get hit with this notion. Just recently, do you know what Orange Shirt Day is, Reggie?
I do.
Okay, so Orange Shirt Day is a day, and it started on the Canadian side to recognize the victims of residential schools. But somewhere along the line, somebody decided that the slogan should be "Every Child Matters," and I have a problem with that because what was the answer to Black Lives Matter? What did white people come back with after Black Lives Matter? What was their response?
All lives matter.
So why didn't we say Native children or our children matter? Instead, we skipped right to the whitewashing and said every child matters. Well, I'll tell you, if every child matters, then why was it only Native kids that got ripped away to these residential schools? And if every child matters, why is it white kids who were molested by in the clergy sex abuse scandal, why did they get paid millions of dollars for each case, and Native people are getting virtually nothing? And our kids were murdered. They weren't just sexually abused and physically abused, psychologically abused. They died. And yet there's not the same type of reparations being offered to the victims of 150 years of residential schools. So I won't wear an Every Child Matters t-shirt. I might wear an orange shirt. In fact, I got the one that says, "Deb Haaland, you should be ashamed of yourself," because I think that's my orange shirt that I might wear. Because look, I would like to think that all lives matter, but they don't. Not in this culture, not in this political scheme. And I would like to think that every child matters, but they don't, and
In
they
theory.
haven't for a very long time. Look, poor kids. I don't know. I mean, I remember once saw a cartoon and that showed and it was a white kid, poor white kid says, "How come Santa Claus likes rich kids better than they do poor kids?" I mean, how do you teach a poor kid about Santa Claus if rich kids get cars for Christmas and these guys, what, get food from the pantry, from the food pantry? I mean, there's something really wrong in this country. And yes, I know there's climate change issues, and I know that there's all of these things that are wrong. But I come back to the same thing we talked about earlier, Reggie. If there's no system of checks and balances today, the question is, was there ever one? Was there ever a system
There
of
it
checks
is.
and balances? That's the
is.
question, right? That's the question.
And the only reason why attention is being put upon that question is because now people are paying attention to an individual who cartoonishly, blatantly, and celebratory violates everything.
As he ignores the
but-
Epstein files. Yes, I got to throw an Epstein files
Yeah.
reference in here.
Yeah.
Because he
Yeah.
was clearly a good friend of Jeffrey Epstein, was
Right.
also involved in the whole pedophilia thing. And yes, I'm saying it flat out. That's what it was. And I know they had they had a bunch of victims of the Epstein abuse
Yesterday, right.
in front of Congress, and all the right-wing Congress folks are coming out saying, "Oh yes, we're going to get to the bottom of this," as they still lick the heels of Donald Trump. I mean, it really is pathetic. It really is pathetic. Reggie, I want to thank you for joining me.
As always.
And
Thank you.
I want to thank those of you who are listening. Support WBAI, support WPFW. I am John Kane. This is Resistance Radio. Nyahweh.